Hello and welcome to a special BriefingsDirect podcast coming to you from the Kony World 2015 conference in Orlando. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host throughout this series of penetrating discussions on the latest in enterprise mobility. We're here to explore advancements in mobile applications design and deployment technologies across the full spectrum of edge devices and operating environments. For our next interview, we welcome Ed Gross, Kony Vice President of Product Management. Ed is focused on the Kony Visualizer product, including requirements prototyping, development oversight, release planning, and lifecycle management. Welcome to BriefingsDirect, Ed.
Thanks, Dana. I'm glad to be here, and exciting event that we're having here at Kony World. We are in the process of educating our customers here on our latest releases in our product portfolio. And one of the ones that we're most excited about is the 2.0 release of our Visualizer product, which really brings forth a number of next generation capabilities with it. Visualizer is a tool by which you can create engaging and dynamic user experiences on all platforms for mobility, including tablet and even desktop as well. And what it really does is it presents an opportunity for designers to take back control of the development process of both designing applications and creating rich next generation user experiences. So if you look at how applications are designed typically, it's a very rigid process of creating wireframes and creating mock-ups and then really throwing those materials over the wall to developers. Designers today, prior to Visualizer, don't really have a suite of tools that they can use to create these applications directly using the technology. Meaning, right now, designers create sort of mock-ups and proxies of that design to hand over to a developer to implement. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if designers had a tool by which they can directly create that user experience in the native and web channels using the underlying Kony framework. So with Visualizer, you can go in with this WYSIWYG environment. It's actually called WYSIWYM. What you see is what you mobilize. It's a coin that we termed because it's really such a unique approach and what we believe to be a new paradigm in designing applications. So as a designer, what I can do is I can just drag and drop widgets onto my forms. I can create dynamic interactions that really showcase the native capabilities that we have with Visualizer. And I can then take that design, I can publish the actual app to the Kony Cloud, and then using an app on my phone or tablet, I can then download that design directly and look at all the native interactions, review them, and get a feel for the actual application without having to write any code. And this is a true native experience. So this is not some sort of web-based proxy or mock-up or set of wireframes. I'm actually creating the app product itself within Visualizer with this WYSIWYG canvas. We provide access to all the native capabilities. So for example, I can use a cover flow widget, or I can use a page widget. I can use a calendar or a camera. So I get access to all those rich native capabilities using what we call actions without having to go down and write code for all these different platforms. And fundamentally, what this also represents is a collaboration opportunity with business and IT. So, if I'm a designer working under the marketing arm of an organization, or I'm even a designer or a developer in the IT organization, by using what we call app preview, I can then take this design, I can publish it to the Kony Cloud, bring it into this app, the shell application that you can download from any of the app stores, and then I can review and I can write notes on this design, send those notes back to the cloud, and ultimately for the Visualizer user, they can see those comments that I've left across the entire application. They can action upon them and iterate through that design process by republishing that app back to the cloud so that the business user or the developer, the designer, whomever is actually reviewing this application can then annotate on it. And the fundamental principle here is you're not just creating a set of assets to hand over to a developer. You're actually creating the app itself. So what's really fundamental here is that we're essentially giving all of the power and all of the control back to the designer, so that the designer can finalize this application and then simply hand it over to the developer using Kony Studio. And the developer can take it from there without having to rewrite any of the front end of the application. So the developer doesn't really need to be concerned with creating all of the user experience components by writing code or creating views. They really focus on, what they do best, which is, hooking that application into back-end services and systems such as SAP, Siebel, or any of your enterprise service bus connectors. If you want to integrate with a web service like an XML, SOAP, JSON service, you do all that in the studio. You don't worry about writing all the front-end code. You sort of make it production ready, you wire it, you do the fundamental business logic of the application and the integration with other products, because what the designer has given you is already really fundamentally complete. And so it cuts down all those cycles. It also cuts down on defects. So, previously what we've seen before Visualizer is that most development projects have a very large number of defects associated with the user experience. And what I mean when I say that is that if you take an application today that was developed using other technology, and you break down all the defects according to what category they belong in, such as integration defects or user experience defects or performance defects, we find that 70% or 80% of the defects categorically are associated with poor implementation of the user experience. So, in that typical waterfall process that I'd mentioned earlier, there's a lot of gaps when you hand those assets over to a developer. The developer has to make a lot of assumptions in that process. They have to fill in a lot of the holes that the designer may have left, because fundamentally, the designer's not going to go in and make sure that they design and spec out every single tiny component of that application. And what winds up happening is that a developer, somewhere in that life cycle that I mentioned earlier, will make assumptions and implement something in a way that doesn't satisfy the requirements of the business. And so you have to sort of go through that whole process of designing and developing over and over again. Now, with Visualizer, you have the capability to quickly iterate. So you publish that app design, you get feedback from the business, as I had mentioned earlier, and even during the development process, reiterate through that design process, because that integration between Visualizer and our studio project is completely bidirectional. So at any point in that development process, you can then transfer that application design back into Visualizer, make any adjustments, and then re-import it back into Studio. So it's a very, our product suite is very well integrated, and that at Kony is something that we believe is a true differentiator. At Kony is that our core focus is mobility, and so we ensure that the developer and designer experience is really world class, by tightly integrating the entire design and development process, and making sure that those two processes are as close to what we call the metal, the underlying channel, as possible, and that they can occur in parallel streams. So you're no longer having to go to sort of a traditional, paper-based design process to move forward with implementing your app design.
Great. Now, tell me, Ed, what is specifically new or some of the highlights in Visualizer 2.0, as well as, I suppose, Framework 6.0?
It's a great question. So, historically at Kony, we've supported a broad swath of devices, from, 2008, if you look at Symbian device, old Symbian devices, BlackBerry devices, all the way up through iOS and Android, and even mobile web and even desktop web, Windows, etc. So what we did is we looked at our layout model that we had previously, and we recognized that we're really going to push forward to the next generation of application design. And so by doing so, we introduced a fundamentally different paradigm to lay out your application using what we call flex layout that's supported on the next generation of what we call hero devices. So really focusing in on those devices, those smartphones, that can provide that next generation level of experience that we've become used to, essentially. If you look at devices like Android and iOS and Windows devices, really that's our core focus, as well as web, mobile web. We really up-leveled the entire experience, so you can design very engaging experiences using flex layout. We've also introduced a number of capabilities around animation. so that you can get those advanced animation and dynamic interactions that you've become used to in consumer-grade applications with Kony. And so, we've also introduced a suite of APIs around this as well. So the developer can create very dynamic experiences, or the designer in Visualizer can create these wonderful experiences using what we call Action Editor to access all of those animation components, as well as a bunch of native components as well, such as the ability to do advanced device level actions like invoke a camera or a map widget or send an SMS or an email, all without having to write code.
A recurring theme here and in the industry at large is the need for speed, closing the gap between the demand for mobile apps and what the IT organization and the developer core can produce. Is there anything about Visualizer and Framework that helps the DevOps process along, perhaps being able to target a cloud or a platform as a service type of affair where you can get that into production rapidly? How does what we brought to the market now help in terms of speed?
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, the first fundamental principle here is that we're significantly and seriously reducing the time it takes to get from design to development through this process. We're seeing a 15x or higher improvement in the time it takes to develop the front end of an application, which is significant, and we believe in that very much. So that's probably the most important thing, fundamentally. There's a number of tools underneath the hood that support that, including that app preview that I had mentioned, which lets you get on the device native without having to go through any of the development cycles. So it's a drastic improvement, and also a huge reduction in the amount of errors in that process. It also increases your capability to iterate, and what I mean when I say that is really sort of create multiple designs and use those designs to socialize your idea or your business process, or what impact that will have on your users up front. So I don't have to go through an entire waterfall process to discover that my user experience may not be right on, it may not be an effective use of my information architecture, for example. So I'm able to do all that up front. And then really all of this is supported with the underlying cloud infrastructure at Kony. So when I publish my app preview, or if I publish this to a developer, it's all supported within our cloud infrastructure. So what I mean when I say that, to get down to brass tacks, is that as a designer, I can publish my project to the Kony cloud and then share it with the developer, as well as what we call our functional previews of that application. That app preview that I had mentioned is all supported with an underlying cloud platform. And then when you look at Studio, our Studio product is highly integrated with our mobile fabric solution, and we're working in our next release to increase that integration even more. So you can invoke our mobile cloud services from our development environment, and we're going to be working to actually merge that entire Studio environment with our Visualizer design component. So, drastically improving the design and designer and development integration experience.
And to tie this into some of the other news and announcements here at Kony World, this is targeted at many of your partners and ISVs, new ones that were brought in, and the burgeoning cloud of supporters, if you will. Is this also what you expect those ISVs to use to create those ready-to-deploy apps like Google or Kony Sales? Or are these for custom apps, or all of the above?
All the above. You bring up a good point. Visualizer is if you look at the lowest level, is really built to support custom app design and development. And that's the traditional core of the Kony technology, of the Kony platform stack. We're introducing a new product, Kony Modeler, this month, and that product is actually built on the foundation of Visualizer and our underlying developer framework. So when you design in Visualizer, you are essentially designing either custom applications or our model-driven business applications such as Kony Sales, and the configuration of those applications inside of Modeler that a business analyst or a business user does is also built on the Visualizer stack. So everything you do is highly visual, and really this speaks to the user-centered development methodology that we see now. User experience-driven applications are the future, and so we recognize that at Kony. We put the user experience first, not the data model. not or any other kind of model. We really focus on driving user expectations, increased performance for B2E applications, increased productivity. All relates back to user experience fundamentally.
Before we close out, I just wanted to affirm a little bit harder, hammer down a little bit on that ISV community and why they would look to Kony. It seems to me that they're focused on the logic and understanding their industries and businesses. They don't want to have to rewrite code. They don't want to be in the platform business. What is it that reduces the risk for an ISV to consider the Kony approach? Perhaps it's in terms of the number of endpoint devices, the ability to write once, run everywhere, the quality and speed issues that you brought up. Just give me a bit more insight as to why an ISV should think about Kony when going to mobile markets.
Well, there's a number of things that I'll recap. The first one is you're greatly reducing the time it takes to get from design to the end product, which is key. Number two, you're able to reduce man hours in the development process of the front-end experience. I'd also like to reiterate that because of our JavaScript, our fundamental underlying JavaScript platform, you're able to write once for all these different channels. And a fourth point that I'd like to bring up on top of these is our SLA, which is unique in the industry. So at Kony, we have a unique SLA that within 30 days of a new operating system release, we will provide support within the Kony platform, and nobody else does that. So we guarantee that support across our ISV channels and our direct customers, so that they don't have to worry about revving up to the next version of the given channel. We really take care of that. We mask our customers from that so that they can focus on innovation.
Well, great. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been learning about how advancements in mobile applications design and deployment technologies are bringing new productivity benefits across the growing spectrum of edge devices and operating environments. And we've seen how quality, speed, and value are rapidly increasing thanks to the Kony mobility platform and the new tools like Visualizer 2.0. So a big thank you to our guest. We've been joined by Ed Gross, Kony Vice President of Product Management. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Dana.
And a big thank you, too, to our audience for joining this special podcast series coming to you directly from the Kony World 2015 conference in Orlando. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host throughout this series of Kony-sponsored BriefingsDirect Enterprise Mobility discussions. Thanks again for listening, and do come back next time.